Today we're going to take a look at Adobe. This is a stock that year to date has fallen almost 23% and is set to announce their earnings on June 13th. So in this video, we will discuss those upcoming earnings as well as what we have seen from the company in the past. So if you enjoy the video, drop a like down below, and if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure to subscribe. As I mentioned, Adobe is a stock that is down almost 23% year to date, and over the course of the last 6 months, it's down almost 26%. It's had a very flat last year, up only 3.25%, and over the last 5 years, it gets even more interesting because this stock from 2019 through 2021 made a run up of over 140%. However, from 2021 through till the end of 2022, the stock fell by over 60%. And since then, it's recovered quite well, up about 62%, but still hasn't reached back these all-time highs of just under $700. And on a 5-year basis, the 61% that Adobe has returned has underperformed the S&P 500, which has returned almost 84% over the same time period. And this very up and down performance is despite the fact that they have beat top and bottom line numbers over the last 4 quarters, and they're hoping to do so again on June 13th, where they're expected to announce EPS numbers of $4.39 and revenue numbers of $5.3 billion. And this number matches Yahoo Finance analyst expectations, coming in at $4.39 as well. They have a very tight range between their low EPS estimate and their high EPS estimate. Only 20 cents difference between their low estimate of $4.35 and the high estimate of $4.55. This shows a lot of certainty from analysts about where Adobe is going to put up their numbers. A year ago, they put up $3.91, and if in this quarter they put up $4.39, that'll be about 12% growth year over year on their EPS. Keep in mind that these numbers are non-GAAP EPS numbers. In a second, we're going to jump over and we're going to take a look at a chart of GAAP EPS numbers, and there's going to be a very important difference, especially when we look at last quarter's earnings report from Adobe, because they had some very interesting things that they had to take on at that time. But before we jump off this page, I did want to point out that analysts in 2024 are expecting Adobe's revenue to increase by 20% year over year. That is a very solid increase for a company that is bringing in $21.5 billion expected this year. The reason that 20% top line growth number is important is because that would get us back to growth numbers that we haven't seen from Adobe since 2021. And back in 2019 and 2020, they were growing their top line numbers by around 20% each and every quarter. However, more recently, that has fallen into high single digits, low double digits. They have still done a very good job over the course of the last 5 years of growing their revenue. In about 2019, they were bringing in anywhere around $10.1 billion of trailing 12-month revenue. That has since grown all the way up to $19.9 billion of trailing 12-month revenue. So they have almost doubled their top line in the last 5 years. And if we look at free cash flow for Adobe, yes, they have struggled in the last year. In 2023, their free cash flow for the year fell by about 6% year over year. However, since 2019, they went from around $4 billion of free cash flow to $6.9 billion of free cash flow in 2023. So there's been a huge jump up here in their free cash flow, which is very good to see overall. The area that Adobe has struggled the most in is their earnings per share. We can see that back in 2021, they saw a trailing 12-month earnings per share of $12.08. However, since then, this number has not grown at all. They're sitting at around $10.47 of trailing 12-month EPS, and they had a very poor quarter last quarter, only putting up $1.36 of trailing 12-month EPS. However, just looking at this GAAP EPS number doesn't tell the full story, because they were hit with a $2.21 acquisition-related expense that really pulled that GAAP EPS number down. And if you pull that out, like you can see here on their earnings report, with their non-GAAP EPS, they actually grew from $3.80 a year ago to $4.48 in their most recent quarter. And this $2.21 hit to their GAAP EPS numbers came from the fact that Adobe was obligated to pay Figma $1 billion billion of cash after their acquisition deal fell through. Regulators actually shut down this deal between Adobe and Figma, but now that this hit is behind them, hopefully they can get back to growing their bottom line. Personally, I haven't yet decided if I want to buy Adobe. I want to see it fall below $400 before I get really interested, but even with its current price, the forward P ratio is sitting at a 24.45. And for a business model like Adobe that is very subscription based, that is a very fair valuation. And analysts for 2024 are expecting Adobe to put up $18.03 of EPS this year. That's compared to $14.81 last year, which is about 21.7% growth year over year. When we look at 2025, they're expecting them to put up $20.38, which is about 13% growth year over year from that $18.03. And with the stock falling in price, they could start buying back even more of their shares. This is something that Adobe has done a good job of over the past 5 years. A few years ago, they were only decreasing their shares outstanding by around 1.25%. However, more recently, they've gotten more aggressive and they've been decreasing their shares outstanding by about 2.5%. But for now, I'm going to sit on the sidelines and see what happens in this upcoming earnings report. There's no rush for me to buy. The stock is currently in a downtrend and maybe these earnings will turn it around. However, I'm kind of leaning more towards the fact that this could send the stock lower. And if again, it falls below that $400 mark, then maybe I'll get interested and buy in. But for now, again, I'm just sitting on the sidelines waiting for a price that I feel comfortable with. But do not buy a stock just because I talked about it here on YouTube. Make sure you are doing your own research and looking into companies that meet your risk tolerance as well as your time horizon. But with that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, drop a like down below. And if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure to subscribe. And as always, guys, have a wonderful rest of your day. And for the joke of the day, which bear is the most condescending? Check the comments down below for the answer. Thanks for watching.